of the agenda for each case. Moderator Arnett will be asked to provide names of those individuals that wish to speak again as hands are raised. I would like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Deborah Coleman, board member, Arnie Sprunger, board member, Jared Frank, vice chair, and myself, Mary Giles, chair. The Department of Planning staff present is Joe Vunich, Director of Planning, and Terry Gaston, Senior Planner. City Attorney John Young and Court Reporter Courtney Tallman are also present. First, I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, May 21st, 2020, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of City of Wildwood, including Chapter 400, Article 2, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustments powers and duties. Now let me explain the hearing procedure. Please be aware the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment public hearing procedure handout, which was available online prior and up to tonight's meeting. This is an informal type of hearing. However, the meeting's proceedings will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if needed. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As the petition is called, I will ask a Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Thereafter, the Department of Planning will have opening remarks and a brief slide presentation. Then the petitioner or the representatives will be asked to state their name and address, be sworn in by the court reporter, and make a brief presentation to the board explaining the nature of the requested variance and the hardship necessitating it. The board will only consider the nature and condition of the property and whether these factors mandate a variance in order to allow for its full utilization. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, the chair will then ask if there's anyone present online who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the request. Each speaker will be asked to provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then state their comments. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing prior to a call for the vote in order to bring in additional documentation or information. The board may also request a continuance to gather additional information or for a further visit to the site. After the conclusion of input from all interested parties, the board will ask a staff person to provide the Department of Planning's report on this matter if requested by any member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual that is participating online. Additionally, any other information not presented in the previous testimony but pertinent to the request will be noted at this time. Once all speakers have been heard, the chair will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions, then the board will vote. At that time, the discussion relating to the petition is concluded and no further input will be permitted. The board will generally make a decision today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the petition for it to be approved. Since there are only 4 members of the board present today, that means that the board has to vote unanimously in order for a variance petition to be approved. If you'd like to postpone your request until the next meeting when hopefully there will be 5 members, please let us know. If the variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right of appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Moderators, are there any questions at this time?
I see none.
Hearing no questions at this time, the board will proceed. May the first request be read into the record, which will be followed by initial comments by the Department of Planning and a brief slide presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, the first case is Board of Adjustment 10-20, Joseph and Diane Monahan, 17321 Thunder Creek Road, Wildwood, Missouri 63025. Care of Drew Bradshaw, the pool specialist, 11766 Missouri Bottom Road, Hazelwood, Missouri 63042. Request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of constructing an in-ground swimming pool with associated concrete decking and retaining wall, all of which are accessory to the established principal use, i.e. existing single-family dwelling circa 1995, upon the property located at 17321 Thunder Creek Road, St. Louis County, locator number 27V110077, Lot 7, Thunder Valley addition to Thunder Mountain subdivision, established 1978, Plat Book 183, page 54. If granted, this variance would thereby authorize a rear yard setback distance of 6.5 feet in lieu of the required 30-foot standard. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415-090 NU Non-Urban Resident District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance. This property is located in Ward 6. The department would add, the board's anticipated action on this request was postponed at its April 16th, 2020 meeting. Subsequently, the department received a revised plan specifying a 20-foot rear yard setback distance in lieu of the previously posted advertisement of 6.5 feet. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, before beginning the hearing on this case, the Department of Planning would like to offer into the record the following as exhibits: the city's charter and master plan, the municipal code of the City of Wildwood, specifically Chapter 400, Article 2, the Board of Adjustments Establishments, Duties and Powers, Chapter 415, Zoning Regulations, the file prepared and maintained on this request, including the petitioner's application and related information, as well as the department's recommendation report, and any testimony, exhibits, or other information offered as part of tonight's hearing as evidence in this cause, and all of which may apply to the case before you this evening. The department has prepared a slide presentation by Director Vunich pertaining to this case, if the board would like it presented at this time.
Please.
Madam Chair, we'll go to share screen at this time. At this time. At this time. Remember what I said at the last meeting? It is Zoom, we're on the internet, so there may be a few glitches, but we'll get through them.
Need me to do something? Am I supposed to be sharing a screen?
I would hope someone, either you or Terry, please.
Oh. Kathy, how's it going?
Well,
Are you able to pull it up?
no, I don't have the, is it a PowerPoint?
Yeah, it's PowerPoint on the
I
share
don't
web
have it.
packet. Hang on. Let me.
To the members of the board and to our petitioner and petitioner's representative, thank you for your patience. We'll have it shortly. This is a great time to take a drink of water, coffee, and preferably some non-alcoholic beverage.
I'm working off of my phone, so bear with me.
I know.
Kathy, it's in the share drive under Board of Adjustment.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Sorry, I thought I dropped the ball. My bad.
No. I was trying to pull it up and it wasn't working.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the first slide represents the location of the subject site relative to the surrounding area. As you can see, it's in the vicinity of Hidden Valley Drive and Alt Road. The next slide is our proverbial roadmap that would take you from City Hall to the subject site. The next slide is the aerial photograph of the subject site. And as you can see from its characteristics, the dwelling is located in the northernmost portion of the property, and it's accessed by a long and uphill, if you're walking that way, driveway. The next slide is the same aerial photograph, but it now includes the topographic lines, which is key on this property because, as I mentioned, there is a substantial amount of slope associated with the driveway, and that's reflective of the property itself. And for the purposes of tonight, there's the application. More importantly, here is the plan that has been provided by the petitioner and petitioner's representative. It now reflects the revised location of the in-ground swimming pool and associated decking, moving from a 6.5-foot distance from the northern property line to 20 feet. And see, as we do Zoom more, we're able to do all kinds of neat little things. The next slide is a more detailed or larger scale image of the swimming pool, decking, and the area. This one represents the 6.5-foot distance versus the last slide, which represented the 20-foot distance. The two are provided to give you a comparison. Then some general information about the site that we'll go through a little quickly. The advertisement, the location and the mailing radius associated with the application.
That's all I have in that document. Sorry.
Well, with Mr. Monahan's permission, which the department appreciated, I actually have some slides somewhere of the property by the dwelling. And I apologize. Unless we can pull them up quickly, I will tell you that it is steeply sloping. I used the emergency brake on the city pickup truck just in case. And the information that would be provided actually indicated that there is a rock shelf at the rear of the property. It's exposed, rendering just a small area of rear yard available for even maintenance or cutting and any improvements. And with that, ma'am, not to delay the meeting, I would like to turn it over to the chair and then the petitioner's representative, who I believe is ready to present.
Thank you, Mr. Munich. Can the petitioner please state your name, address, and relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Good evening, everyone. Can you guys all hear me correctly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm Drew Bradshaw with the Pool Specialist. Our address is 11766 Missouri Bottom Road, Hazelwood, Missouri. We are the contractor hired by the petitioner to build a swimming pool. We met with you last month, and Joe thinks he's going to go over the previous plan as well as our new plan, kind of as a compromise. We're trying to do what we can.
Mr. Bradshaw, pardon my interruption, but Ms. Tallman needs to swear you in. My apologies.
Thank you.
Let me see if I can see him. There you are. Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Bradshaw, can you now explain the nature of the request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance?
Due to the shape and size, as well as kind of the topography of the lot, as well as part of like what Joe said too, is the geographical background of the property with the large rock shelf. We've requested to propose a new swimming pool on the side of the house as opposed to behind the house in the rear yard. We have asked for a variance, what is normally 30 feet from the property, to do 20 feet from the property line. That is to the pool deck. So we've brought everything within. We met previously, asked for a 6-foot variance. It seemed like the board would not allow that. We did discuss at that time that there'd be some type of compromise, and that is what we've presented again tonight, is that new revised plan showing a 20-foot setback from the property line to the closest portion of the pool patio. The pool itself proper is an additional 6 feet from that rear setback line.
Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Are there any board members that have any questions for Mr. Bradshaw?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do have pictures from the slide presentation if you would like them seen now. I know it's kind of backwards.
Sure.
Is everyone able to see my slide?
Yes, I am.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Director Vunich, if you would like to narrate, I will just go through the slides as you tell me.
Terry, we're trying to get them up on another computer, so if you can narrate what you have, and then we'll provide when we get it logged in. Sorry.
Oh, nope, you're fine. Okay, so this is the back of the house at the corner of the deck. This is the slope from the back of the house. And again, you can see the corner of the deck approximately here. This is another slide showing downslope from that in the approximate location of where the pool will be situated. This is the driveway leading up to the home. This is the side yard area, excuse me, side yard area of the lot. Another aspect of the side yard. And this is shows a good example of some of the erosion that can occur. And the property owner is planning on putting in a retaining wall. Again, this is the original plan that was proposed at the April meeting, showing a rear yard setback of 6.5 feet. This here shows the rear property line to the north, 6.5 feet to the concrete decking, and then approximately 12.6 feet to the edge of the water line of the pool. Now that, again, that plan has changed. This is the revised plan, a 20-foot rear yard. Here's the rear property line, and it is 20 feet to the concrete decking and the pool. Again, the pool was up here. It has been shifted to the west and south. And that's what we have. Was everybody able to follow that well enough?
Yes.
I think so, yeah. Do any board members have any questions?
Mm-mm.
Moderator Arnett, did we receive any public comments by email or online? Okay. Where'd she go? At this time, I'll offer an opportunity to hear an oral presentation.
We're trying to use another computer to see if we can make it work. Obviously, we're not successful. So
Want me to hold off here for a second?
apologies. After this case, before we proceed on, I think we can get it figured out if we take a 5-minute recess.
Okay. All right. At this time, I'll offer an opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report. See no request for that. Does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
Yes, ma'am. First and foremost, we'd like to extend our appreciation to Mr. Monahan for considering alterations to his original plan. Certainly it makes this much easier for all of us. And the department is supporting the revised variants based upon the physical characteristics of the site. As you saw via Terry's phone, it does have a significant amount of slope and limited backyard area based upon the rock shelf. So again, we are recommending the 20-foot variance in lieu of 30 feet. Thank you. And Kathy, Terry, and I are available for any questions, preferably not about PowerPoints on Zoom.
Thank you, Director Vunich. Does the board have any final questions or comments? Seeing none, at this time, I'll close the proceeding for a vote. and I will call for a vote. Is there a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions?
I will motion to approve the variance.
We have a motion to approve the variance request. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Sprunger. We have a second. Mr. Frank, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Sprunger, how do you vote?
Approve.
Ms. Coleman, how do you vote?
Approve.
And I also approve. Congratulations, your variance request has been approved.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
You.
We're gonna
Madam
take
Chair?
take a 5-minute recess.
If you wouldn't mind, we certainly appreciate it.
All righty, I'm putting
good
myself on mute.
Chair Giles, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. I did. We got it uploaded to SharePoint. So hopefully this works very soon.
Okay. Let me know when I should get going again.
Again, very sorry for the delay. Madam Chair, could you let me know who made the motion and second on that last case?
The motion was Mr. Frank and the second was Mr. Sprunger.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do we have Director Bunich and Assistant Director Arnett still on?
Madam Chair, we have it uploaded to SharePoint. It's downloading to Kathy's computer. So if you'll give us a couple more minutes, I think we'll be ready to go.
All righty.
My
Let me know when
apologies.
you're
This is the fun of Zoom. Remember that.
Right.
Zoom
right.
is fun.
That and keeping the kids quiet downstairs. That's also fun.
Director Bunich, do we need to read this into the record before giving the petitioner an option to postpone?
Madam Chair, it appears that SharePoint has saved the day and Ms. Arnett is now in ownership of a PowerPoint presentation.
Great. Are we ready to get going?
Kathleen, are you ready?
I am. You ready? How's that?
There you
Well, I'll
go.
be,
Oh, I'm sweating.
so remember folks, Zoom is fun. Madam Chair, thank you for your patience as well as the members of the board and our petitioners and others tonight. We appreciate it very much.
All right, the meeting is back in session, and can the next petition be read into the official record by the Department of Planning staff?
And my apologies to the petitioners. I'm sure I'm going to say their name wrong, but I'll do my best. The next case is Board of Adjustment 11-20, Mark and Julie Cavanell, 3410 Witsit Fork Road, Wildwood, Missouri, 63038. Request an exception to the specific yard requirements and exceptions, parenthetical or bracket G.4.J, for the purpose of constructing a private stable at a size of 4,000 square feet, 50 feet by 80 feet, inclusive of lean-to, upon the property that is located at 3410 Witsit Fork Road, St. Louis County locator number 26V410068, adjusted track B of the Persaki Estates on Witsit Fork subdivision, established 2019, Plat Book 367, page 490. If granted, this variance would thereby authorize the placement of this structure at a 60-foot distance from the side western property line in lieu of the 100-foot requirement from any boundary line associated with this lot. This request is contrary to the requirements of section 415.090 of the NU Non-Urban Resident District of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance. This particular property is located in Ward 6. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, excuse me, pardon me. Madam Chair, before beginning the hearing on this case, the Department of Planning would like to offer into the record the following as exhibits: the city's charter and master plan, the municipal code of the City of Wildwood, specifically Chapter 400, Article 2, the Board of Adjustments Establishment, Duties and Powers, Chapter 415, Zoning Regulations, the file prepared and maintained on this request, including the petitioner's application and related information, as well as the department's recommendation report, and any testimony, exhibits, or other information offered as part of tonight's hearing as evidence in this cause, and all of which may apply to the case before you this evening. The department has prepared a slide presentation by Director Vunich pertaining to this case if the board would like it presented at this time.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first slide that is being presented tonight for your consideration is the overall aerial photograph of the vicinity within or nearby the subject site. The subject site is outlined in red with the circle and the X in the center of the circle. The surrounding road system is Witsit Fork Road. To the west is Remington Heights Court, and off the aerial photograph and to the right-hand side, a distance away is State Route 109. The next slide is our road map from City Hall to the subject site. The next slide is the aerial photograph of the subject site. And as you can see, a portion of the subject site is located north of Witsit Fork Road. And then the majority of the site is located south of the same. Also on this slide, you can see that there is an area of 100-year floodplain that's represented by the blue hatched area, and then 500-year floodplain, which is represented by the yellow hatched area. I would note The city of Wildwood does not regulate per se the 500-year floodplain, only the 100-year. The next aerial photograph, which is the next slide as well, is the site with topography now added. And as you can see on the north side of Whitsett Fork Road, topography is substantial. And as you cross the roadway and head south or to the southern boundary of the site, topography lessens and becomes more indicative of floodplain. And just to kind of give you a perspective, not all Board of Adjustment meetings go as planned. So I even had trouble with the camera at this site. So the slides are just something to be in awe of, I guess, tonight. This slide is standing at the property, looking toward the east at Whitsett Fork Road. The property is on the right-hand portion of the slide. Again, standing next to the site, looking toward the west at Whitsett Fork Road. And there is this particular slide also gives you a good view of the adjoining property and the outbuilding that exists on it. The next slide is a view of a portion of Whitsett Fork Road, but more importantly, this is where the actual single-family dwelling is located. Again, as I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, the lot is split by the easement for Whitsett Fork Road and the actual pavement surface. And the next slides are representations of the southern 2/3 of the property. This is along the western boundary line. So this is the boundary line that's most impacted by the variance. As you can see, there's a gravel drive that serves the outbuilding on the adjoining property. And this is moving a little further to the east in the same general area. In the right portion of the slide, you can see just a bit of the gravel drive, but here you're starting to be able to determine the slope from high going to low, and then the treed area of the property, which is significant. This is stepping into that treed area and looking to the south. The brighter colored area in the background is the pasture or grass, and there also is a creek back there, Cart Creek. I will defer to the petitioner to identify the red X's on the trees and the white dots. That may be the area where the private stable is planned. And again, just a different view of the same general location. There are also some survey flags that have been placed on the ground. And again, I'll allow the petitioner to describe those if they have any bearing on this request. And again, just kind of walking through the woods to give you a perspective of the topography, the tree growth, and just what the floodplain area looks, which is in the background again of the slide. And here we're more again looking toward the southeast corner, and just wanted to give this perspective again because it does show the survey flags and then the trees that have been marked. And I've walked to almost the edge of the woodland area on the property. And there in the background is the floodplain area, which is primarily pasture or grass. And then the boundary line of the property along the creek is the tree line itself. This is looking in the general vicinity of the center of the site to the west, and you can see the outbuilding in the background of the slide. And then this is looking to the east, and again, another outbuilding on the adjoining property to the east, as well as pasture area that's been fenced. The next slide is the plot plan or site plan that's been provided by the petitioner. And as you can see, it represents the entirety of the site. the dwelling in the northern portion, Whitsett Fork Road easement, and then the proposed private stable and access to it. And then the petitioner was kind enough to provide architectural elevations. And this is what the proposed private stable would look like on the property. And again, our advertisement does take into account the 10-foot lean-to, which is on the upper rendering, and then these two as well. And I believe if there are any questions at this time, Ms. Gaston, Ms. Arnett, and I would be glad to try to answer them.
Thank you, Director Vunich. Are there any questions from the board for the Department of Planning?
Well, I have one. So I'm looking at the map. So is it not feasible to move the barn over so that it would be within the right 100 foot? Is that not possible?
From a practical.
So I'm looking.
Yes. I'm sorry, Ms. Coleman, I interrupted you. I apologize.
Well, that's okay. I was just wondering, was it not feasible to move the building? As I'm looking at your map there, is it not feasible to move the building to the right? Was there an issue with the land on that side?
It's certainly feasible, but I believe the petitioner will describe why the reduction in 40 feet from the 100-foot distance is necessary. I think he
Okay.
called it for a more efficient use of the property. So I'll
Oh,
leave that up
okay.
to the
All
petitioner.
right. Sounds good.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Are there any other
Now,
questions from
question?
the board for the Department of Planning?
I have a question. Are we there? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Okay. On the diagram or the drawing, I see, and this is just to help understand, there's this 100-foot setback. And then I also see it's a lot more faint, but I see I think it says 30-foot building line. What's the difference between those two?
So in the non-urban resident district, Mr. Sprunger, the general setback distances for any building or structure, excepting a private stable, is 50 feet from any roadway dedication or easement, and then 30 feet from any side or rear yard area. But in the non-urban resident district, private stables has the most restrictive setback that the city has as a regulation. Private stables have to maintain a 100-foot setback distance from any property or boundary line.
Okay, and it's just because it's a stable.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for the Department of Planning before we call the petitioner forward? All right. Can the petitioner please state your name, address, and relation to the party, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
Sure. So good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I am Mark Kavanaugh, and my address is 3410 Whitsetts Fork in Glencoe, Missouri, 63038.
Thank you, Mr. Cavanaugh. Can you be sworn in by the court reporter now, please?
Absolutely.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cavanaugh. Can you now explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance?
Yes, absolutely. So there's really two key reasons why we're asking for the variance. And the first one is, as Joe had mentioned, it's really making efficient use of the usable land that we have. And the second one is really maintaining the healthiest trees within that tree farm portion of the property. So I'll start with the first one. And as you saw on the drawing layouts, we have about 5 acres of total land. We have a long plot, but it's very narrow. And there is a significant portion that Joe pointed out, which is floodplain. So it's the 100-year, 500-year floodplain. And so we are trying to stay out of the floodplain for the construction of this building. And in addition to that, we have long-term plans to ensure, or to have, sorry, I was just interrupted here, to ensure that we can do what we'd like to do with the property, which is to have a horse paddock and eventually an outside riding arena, and still outside the flood plains. So that would be the first reason. That reason is really about the trees themselves. When my wife and I purchased this property last 6 months, certainly the trees were one of the attractions to us. The trees, if you recall on the plot, they look a little out of place because everything to the east and the west and really has no trees, and but they really are unnatural. So the previous owner did plant all of these trees with the express purpose of being a tree farm. So they were planted on a 6-foot foot grid, basically. And unfortunately, that never materialized, and the trees matured. And since they're so close together on 6-foot centers, there is a lot of dead or dying, unhealthy trees. There are some good healthy trees there. So we're trying to position this barn in an area where we're taking out trees, but nothing that's significant. This represents about 5% less of the total amount of trees on the property, while still maintaining trees in the rest of the property to the best ability. And to further that point, we have consulted with a forestry professional. And so he has come out, and Joe mentioned the markings that were on the trees. So the white marks indicate trees that would have to be removed as a result of the construction of the private stable. The red markings were actually already there and represent all the trees that are dead. Some of those are ash, some of those are locust. There's bald cypress. There's a wide variety of trees that exist in this tree farm area. The red X's are basically dead trees, which were done a few years ago. So certainly there's more dead trees now than there were. But I guess long story short, a couple other things I would like to say, just in summary. So the variant allows for future use of the property, again, with the paddock and the outdoor arena. And so that's why the positioning is critical right there, to maintain outside the floodplain. We also have horse properties pretty much up in Whitsett's Fork, and the adjacent neighbors are also horse property. So you saw on the drawings that Joe showed, to the east and to the west, there are stables and property there. So this fall right in line with that. And then the final thing is we're trying to maintain the best and healthiest trees with this property as we can. So those are really the reasons that we're trying to position Melbourne where it is. And appreciate your time and would be more than happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. Do any board members have any questions for the petitioner,
I do.
Mr. Sprunger?
Yes, Mr. Cavanagh or whatever. So are you stating that you feel like you wouldn't be able to have the paddock or the riding area? That wouldn't be possible if you put your stable inside the 100-foot setback area? That's my first question. The second question is, are there restrictions for what you can do, what you're permitted to do in terms of riding area in the floodplains? So they're kind of related. Trying to figure out why it, and I understand, you know, if you could move the stable over, I mean, I get that, but if you really stayed between the two lines, between the 200-foot setbacks, you know, exactly how does that restrict you from, you know, putting in your paddock and your riding area?
Yeah, so good question. And I mean, the answer is yes. I mean, that the physical dimensions of that barn will fit within that area between the 100 feet setbacks. The issue is there's a couple issues. First of all, we would not put it there because then we would have to have the paddock on one side of the barn and we would have to have the arena on the other side of the barn. So we would not orientate the barn like that. The other issue is getting the gravel drive to the barn. In one of the pictures that Joe had showed, there is a culvert that runs underneath Whitsett's Fork that comes out towards the east part of the property, and that would make it problematic to run the, yeah, you can see the top of the wall right there, just a small couple foot wall there by the mailbox, and that would make it, I mean, we would basically have to curve the gravel road around to, we'd have to snake it through there to get to the barn. But we would not do that. We would choose not to put it in the middle of the property because that layout doesn't going to work for us. So what we actually do is turn that barn 90 degrees, which then we would still be asking for a variance because it will not fit in that sliver between the 100 feet variances. And we would slide that barn, we would have to slide the barn to the north, really to stay out of the floodplain. So, you know, those are the options we considered, but neither one of those are, I mean, they're just not good options for us. And then I think your other question was around the floodplain. That simply be used as pasture land, and that's, you know, very typical of what other in the floodplain here are doing as well, including the neighbors on both sides.
So you can't put a riding area in the floodplain, is that what you're saying?
Mr. Sprunger,
You probably could, but we would not do that. I mean, the cost is too much and the risk is too great.
and with the permission of Madam Chair, Mr. Sprunger, I could probably lend some information to that second question.
Please.
Mr. Sprunger and members of the board, the best use of a 100-year floodplain for all intents and purposes is pasture area. and we do encourage it. The only intrusion into that area typically is fencing. But certainly the outdoor riding arena, we would prefer not to have it in the 100-year floodplain. And I believe that's what the petitioner is proposing in the future, is to keep the more intensive improvements out of the floodplain area and keep it as grass and pasture.
And so like, that's the 100-year floodplain, but the 500-year floodplain goes much further into the property, right?
That's correct. But again, that's unregulated. But what we're finding over the last couple of years, we've had several 500-year events. And so I think the caution on petitioner's part in terms of the placement of the stable is wise.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. If you, and this will be, I think, probably my last question. If you did, Mr. Cavanagh, if you did rotate your stable 90 degrees, how much of a variance would you be looking for then? Because I don't know what the distance is between those 200-foot setback lines is.
Yeah, it's the total width of the property is about 275 feet. So we would still be asking for a variance of 5 to 10 feet, somewhere in that range.
Okay. 5 to 10 feet. Okay.
Right.
On both sides of the line, right?
Yeah, I don't know exactly where we would put it, but yes, it would probably be about 10 feet, either 5 feet on both sides or 10 feet on one side.
Okay.
You know, if we were right in the middle.
Okay. But what I'm hearing you say is that's not really a viable option, or you don't feel that's a viable option for you?
We certainly do not like that option. The layout is less desirable for us, and the tree removal that would be required to do that is more than what we've spec'd out in this scenario.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And again, with the permission of the chair, I'd like to add a comment.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Sprunger, the proposed layout, although needing a variance of approximately 40 feet, does put less of the outbuildings facade facing the road, meaning that instead of the long part being seen from the road, it's actually the shortest component of the building. And typically, that's what we strive for if we have the option.
Are there any other questions for the petitioner at this time? Moderator Arnett, did we receive any public comments by email or online?
I believe Director Vunich has the online ones that we received, but I will say while I have the mic real quick, the only person in the attendee section is the next petitioner. So I don't believe we'll have any public comments live in the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam
yes.
Chair.
Yes.
The report specifies that there was a written request, a written letter of support from the neighbor to the east that was received along with the petitioner's application. Since we posted this, we received 8 online comment forms, which were included with your reports. And at the direction of Director Vunich, I would be happy to read those into the record. They are part of the recommendation report already. We did receive one since that posting of the recommendation report this evening, and that was from Bob Beisch at 3477 Wissets Fork Road. His comments: my wife and I have lived in the valley for over 20 years, and we have owned property there for over 40 years. We are both in favor of the exception of the variance and support their decision of Mark and Julie. And if you would like the others read into the record, that can be done as well. But like I said, it's part of the recommendation report already.
And Madam Chair, I consulted with the city attorney before the case began tonight. And since it's not under sworn testimony, we can reference them as being received. All are supportive. And I believe with the one received after the posting of the recommendation report, there were 10 in total.
Thank you, Director Vintage.
Did we, I'd like to ask a question. Did we receive any, anything from the property owners from that are west of the, which would be the closest ones right to the stable, right?
Yes.
And
Sorry,
the
I don't know if
depart-
I'm supposed to speak, but
Okay. So the written letter of support came from 3402, which is directly to the east. The property owners, the Persekis, who own the property on the west side that have a barn there, they actually sold the property to Mark and Julie. The Persekis did a boundary adjustment plat. And if you go, if you look at the cover slide that says Board of Adjustment 1120 Cavanale, you will see that there's the red outline, which is the Cavanale's property, and the blue outline is what was adjusted and kept by the Persekis. So they are aware of this. However, there is nothing in the file of their support or opposition to the request at this time. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I believe the petitioner did want to add a comment regarding the Persekis, his neighbor to the west.
Sure, go ahead.
yes, thank you. The Persekis did provide a letter of support. They shared that directly with Steve Vogel. And when I spoke with Steve about it, he said he would make sure that it got into the report. But there was a letter of support, and I was copied on it, but they sent it directly to Steve. They did not do it online, but they are fully aware and fully supportive on both sides, the Persekis and the Hertz, of what we're doing here. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, and to the members of the board, I apologize it wasn't forwarded on to Ms. Gaston or I, but since the petitioner is under oath and sworn to tell the truth, I would take his statement as being accurate.
I believe him.
Thank you.
So Joe, the reason for the 100-foot setback instead of, like in this case, a 30-foot setback is, it's a stable, and obviously there's animals and I don't know, there may be associated noise or smell or whatever, right? I'm assuming that's why there's a more restrictive setback. Am I right in assuming that?
Very much so, sir. You're correct.
Okay, so I guess by my way of thinking, I appreciate the city wanting to protect the interests of the adjacent landowners, because they're the ones who obviously are going to feel the impact of a stable, closer to them, right? Yeah, so I think it's really important for us to understand, what those adjacent landowners really, how they feel about it. Because since the reason for that restrictive setback is to protect them, if they're fine with it, it kind of makes you wonder, okay, well, at least that part of why one would consider this variance, maybe that's, from my perspective, is just that they're aware of what that means, having a stable closer, and they're fine with it. So, okay, maybe that is okay. The whole tree thing, I'm not sure if I completely understood that. What I think I hear from Mr. Cavanale is that by leaving the structure where it is, or where he's proposed or asking it to be, actually is less invasive into healthy trees than if he were to turn it or move it some other place. Am I understanding that correctly or am I not?
My understanding of petitioner's presentation is exactly the same as yours, that a forester was engaged, identified dead trees and those trees of lesser value, such as some believe locust are that. And so they strategically placed the stable to preserve the healthy stock versus the unhealthy.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from the board for the petitioner or for the Department of Planning? All right.
No,
Sorry.
sorry. I would just say, I think there's some really good questions coming up here. I do want to point out that on the one side, the Hertz, so I mean, they've already shown their support, but that is a horse property. And on the other side, Saki's, that barn that exists there already is currently converted into a horse barn. So they're on each side of us, there's their horse properties. So if the 100-foot setback reason really is for odor or noise, we're surrounded on both sides by equivalent odors and noises. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report for anyone who would like to request that. Seeing none, does the Department of Planning have any opportunity, or does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
See, the department's stigma tonight is contagious.
Yes.
Madam Chair and members of the board, if there is an inclination to approve the variance as submitted by the petitioner, we would ask that the petitioner provide any information he received from the forester as support for the favorable action. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bunich. Does anyone from the board have any final comments?
I think I do.
Okay.
Go ahead, Deborah. Did you have one?
No, my question was answered.
Okay, great. So I guess maybe just to ask Mr. Bunich, Joe, it sounds like maybe there's been some new information presented tonight that I think maybe the city was not aware of, like a report from the Forestry Service or whatever. Based on that information, does that affect the recommendation that the city might have?
Yes, it does. Obviously, when a property owner goes the extra mile to analyze the tree stock on their property, identify those that are dead or diseased or certainly not as valued as some of the other hardwoods, I think that shows a care for the property that a reduction in the setback isn't going to change. And then secondly, due to an error on the department's part, we did not know that the Persekis had issued a favorable letter. And I think that's important as well, just as you've identified, Mr. Sprunger, that they are the most impacted party. So yes, that's why I'm saying if you're inclined to approve, I think all we would like is to have for the record any information the forester left for them, for the petitioners.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments by the board? At this time, I'd like to close the proceedings so that we may vote and call for a vote. Can I get a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions?
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the petition as requested.
Is that with or without the forester's report attached?
Yeah, with the forester's report and to make sure that the letter from the Persekis also is available to the department.
We have a motion to approve with the requirement that the forester report is submitted along with the letter from the neighboring property most impacted. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Mr. Frank, how do you vote?
Approve with the conditions that were mentioned.
Ms. Coleman, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Sprunger, how do you vote?
Approve?
And I also approve with those conditions. Your petition has been approved, subject to your submission of the forestry report and that letter being submitted for the record.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And who, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Who did I send that information to?
To Terry and Joe, please.
Okay. Very good. I'll get it on its way.
You know,
Thank you.
not to be a comedian, but certainly don't send it to Mr. Vogel.
He has been absolutely fantastic to work with. So, and I know he's got a lot going on. So.
Well, thank you for
We'll
saying
cut him
that.
some slack.
Again, I'm just kidding.
Thank you for your time and your consideration this evening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we get the final petition read into the official record by the Department of Planning?
Certainly. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Revised Board of Adjustment 1220, Chris and Kaylia Lenars, 16617, Cox Creek Ridge, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005, care of Mike Schaaf, Rescom LLC, 193 Falsetti Drive, Arnold, Missouri, 63010. Request an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of constructing a third car garage addition onto an existing single-family dwelling circa 1983, as well as accommodating a modification to the existing shed roof style front porch to a larger gabled covered porch, all of which is to be located upon property at 16617 Cox Creek Ridge, St. Louis County, locator number 19U230168. This is Lot 5 of Cox Creek Ridge subdivision, established in 1981 per Plat Book 207, page 32. If granted, this variance would thereby authorize a front yard setback distance of 30 feet in lieu of the required 50-foot standard. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban Residence District Regulations of the City of Wildwood's zoning ordinance. This property is located in Ward 2. And just for clarification on the posting of this, the agenda had already been posted by the city clerk when the day of the 15-day deadline, it was brought to the attention of the department that the front porch was also to be modified. The original posting only included the expansion of the attached garage, and therefore the advertisement that is shown in bold lettering is what was modified. Thank you very much.
And Madam Chair, before proceeding forward with the case itself, the Department of Planning would like to introduce into tonight's record the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, which relates to the Board of Adjustment and its authorities and duties. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning relating to this particular case, and all contents contained therein, including the department's recommendation report and the applicant's petition. And then finally, any testimony, exhibits, or other items provided as part of this case as evidence tonight. Madam Chair, Ms. Gaston has taken some photographs of the property and has prepared a slide presentation if you would like to see it at this time.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Assistant Director Arnett, for going through the slides with me. The property is located at 16617 Cox Creek Ridge Lane. It actually has triple frontage, but it is accessed via Kerrs Mill to Cox Creek Ridge Lane along its southern property line. On the west, it is bound by Kerrs Mill, and on the north, it is bound by Strecker Road. The next slide is the road map that shows its location relative to City Hall. Basically, you would take 100 to 109 to Shepherd Road to Strecker Road and wrap back around to Kerrs Mill to get to Cox Creek Ridge Lane. Here's a close-up of the property. This shows the floodplain. The blue, again, is 100-year, and the yellow is 500-year. As you can see, this property is pretty much encumbered by floodplain. The next slide shows the topography of the site. At the south boundary where the house is placed, or excuse me, positioned, that is its steepest area, and then it falls drastically to the north at its lowest point on Saddle Creek, which is a tributary of Cox Creek. And then you can see a sort of figure 8 sized pond, followed by a putting green, and then the property rises steeply again to Strecker Road. This is at the intersection of Kerrs Mill and Cox Creek Ridge Lane. As you will hear later on in the presentation, there has been a number of variances approved for this subdivision, one being that information sign. That information sign was approved at 14 feet from Cox Creek Ridge Lane. This is on Cox Creek Ridge Lane, approaching the subject site. This is looking in a northwest direction with the existing dwelling, again, circa 1983. This is looking to the west of the home site. The home is positioned to the right of the slide, and you can see across the street from this that kind of lawn and woodlands. Panning around, looking to the south-southeast, again, lawn and woodlands, and this is Cox Creek Lane. As you would drive south to Kerrs Mill. And the home site is standing behind us. And then this is on the driveway. You can see the front porch with the shed overhang just in front of the two lighted pillars. And then the existing garage behind that. And then you will also see another picture of the retaining wall that holds the grade back away from the driveway. And then these are just a few pictures painting across the front of the home. As you can see, the shed style overhang over the front porch stoop. That again is to be modified to a gabled, fully covered front porch. This is looking straight on to the home in a north direction. And then just panning around, this is looking in a northeast direction with Cox Creek Ridge Lane just off to the right of the slide. And as we progress to the parking pad area in front of the garage, you can see the retaining wall to the right of the slide. And you can barely see the front porch again, where that is to be modified to a gable covered porch. Now, this picture depicts the existing garage, which indicates it is the 3-car garage, but it is substantially undersized. So you cannot actually fit 3 full-size vehicles in this. The petitioner's request is to expand it to the right by 2 feet and to project off of this facade by 3 feet. And then panning around, this is looking in a northeast direction, the back of the house. And these pictures here just show the grade and how severe it drops off and the other existing improvements. Again, it has a number of decks, as you can see here. Here's several of them, the foreground, and then behind the kitchen by the back window. And then there's a pavilion down to the left. This shows the drop off. This is a waterfall at the very forefront. And then you can see the concrete decking down below with an in-ground swimming pool, the small pavilion. Beyond that, you can see Saddle Creek. And then this is looking in a north-northwest direction, another pavilion, pergola, with the waterfall flowing down towards the pool area at the foreground. And you can see a footbridge that takes visitors to the site across Saddle Creek. And this shows the tiered retaining wall. The closest neighbor is very on the tippy top of that wall, a couple 100 feet away. And Cox Creek Ridge Lane would be off to the left of this slide. This here shows an overall site plan of the property. The large kind of squarish looking area in the middle that overlays Saddle Creek is a stormwater detention easement that is protected. You can see the outline of the pond, the little putting green to the north of that. Again, to the north of that is Strecker Road. On the east side is Kerr's Mill. To the south, Cox Creek Lane. Excuse me, Cox Creek Ridge Lane. And then the majority of all of the buildings and structures are just nestled into the very southwest corner of the property. Again, the setback request is 30 feet, and that is to accommodate the front porch renovation. The expansion of the attached garage measures at 39 feet. And I believe that wraps up our slide. Oh, wait, I think there's one more that shows the elevations. Yes. So you can see the front porch, instead of a shed style roof, it is now a fully covered gable front porch. And then you can see to the left, the extension of the garage to the west, and it will also come towards the driveway by another 2 feet. And that wraps up the slide presentation. If you have any questions, I'm available. And I'm sure the petitioner would like to add his information. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gaston. Are there any questions for Ms. Gaston before I call the petitioner up? Can the petitioner please state your name, address, and relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter?
(193) Fall City.
I'm sorry, we're live. Oh, we're muted. How do I unmute, baby?
You're okay. I unmuted you. You're ready to go.
Mike Shaft, 193 Fall City, Arnold, Missouri, 63010.
Thank you. Can you please be sworn in by the court reporter?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, can you please explain the nature of your request and the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance?
Terry pretty much explained it clearly, but I can add to it. The garage, especially the one with the 8-foot door, when she pulls in it, the car is all the way against the interior wall forward. and cannot shut the garage door and get out and go around the car. It has to remain open to the weather so she can go around the car and into the garage. Also, the larger door, which is 16 foot, getting 2 vehicles in there at this day and age is virtually impossible. Unless they were Mini Coopers. And as far as the front porch stoop, just want to add some class to the front of the house.
All right, are there any questions for the petitioner from the board?
Well, I have one. So my understanding is the addition to the front porch, how you want to change it, it doesn't really make it protrude any farther into the area?
Not much more than what the overhang is already projecting out.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from the board for the petitioner? All right, thank you. At this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the board's or the department's report for anybody who'd like to hear it. Hearing none, does the Department of Planning have any final comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the board, the Department of Planning is supporting the requested variance for both items. We believe the physical characteristics of the lot, the floodplain, the slope, and the placement of the existing residence in an area that's protected by a large retaining wall dictate the need for the variances, and we do support them. And Ms. Gaston, Ms. Ardette, and I are available for any questions or comments regarding that favorable report.
Thank you, Director Vunich. Does the board have any final comments before we close the proceeding for a vote? All right, at this time, I'd like to close the proceeding and call for a vote. Can I get a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions?
I will motion to approve the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. We have a motion to approve the variance. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Sprunger. Ms. Coleman, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Frank, how do you vote?
Approve.
Mr. Sprunger, how do you vote?
Approve.
I also approve. The variance has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to the petitioners, thank you for your patience tonight with our technology. We do appreciate it.
Problem at all.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good luck.
Yeah. No more hail damage.
Okay,
Any comments from the board before we close the meeting? Or
the next meeting is June 18th, and we already have some cases.
Oh, goody.
Wow.
Madam Chair, just before you all leave, again, thank you for your patience tonight. Zoom is a learning tool. It's fun, but we are learning. So thank you for kind of sticking in there with us and understanding. We do appreciate it. And we all like here at City Hall to wish you a happy Memorial Day weekend. And to Courtney and John Young, and particularly our moderator, thank you. We couldn't do it without you.
Yes.
Well, you almost did better without me tonight. Thank you for your patience.
Happy Memorial Day, everybody.
Yes.
Happy
Thank you very much.
Memorial Day.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
The meeting is adjourned.